Water cuts are coming to the Southwest, and it's now in the hands of the feds. Nevada has certainly made its case for cuts, but California argues that it should take the least hit. A big reason why: the water they need to grow our food. Is there going to be a legal showdown? A Nevada expert on the Colorado River weighs in. What could be next? To save Lake Mead, Nevada and California both agree more water cuts should come, but the Silver State and Golden State are at odds who should sacrifice more. In California's water plan, it would agree to 10% cuts. By the law of the river from back in 1922, California has senior water rights. That means Arizona, then Nevada would be subject to the most cuts. The Lake Mead level to trigger more cuts, they say, should stay at 1,025 feet. In Nevada's more conservative plan, it argues the trigger level should be at 1,090 feet, and 1.5 million acre feet that evaporates should count towards what states can use. Water naturally evaporates when it flows en route to states and Mexico, and most drives up en route to California.
California's proposal really relies on the law of the river. Our hydrology on the Colorado River is so different now. It's understandable that Southern Nevada sees themselves as being really innovative and really good at conservation and might therefore be upset with California's proposal.
Elizabeth Cobley, associate professor of political science at UNR, tracks the politics of water and says while a legal water showdown is always possible, what's more likely? The feds will ask states to hash out differences, and Nevada and California will come to a compromise, at least until 2026, when the law of the river expires.
We have a history of collaboration that is really powerful and has got us really far in a tough decade.
Do you think the feds are going to recognize that Nevada uses less water than it's allocated and already does so much?
It's well recognized that Nevada is already one of the most efficient states in the basin. They are working hard to...
The Southern Nevada Water Authority says it's reviewing California's plan before it can comment. Cobley says the feds are going to release a draft of their ideas by spring, but she thinks the issue of evaporation is going to be off the table till the agreement is up in 2026.